hurricane specialist Robbie Berg at the National Hurricane Center. High tide arriving at the coastal barrier islands.
That's about the time you're going to have a lot of that storm surge pushing up in this area. So then the roads that connect the mainland with the barrier islands, with the coastal areas, those should be submerged at that time. And what that means, the people elected to ride out the storm in their beach houses, those people are going to be disconnected. They're going to be on their own. The first responders have been given a directive. Once a wind is past 40 miles per hour, leave the people. You can't go add to the victims.
As Fox's Mike Tobin in Savannah, Georgia. Relief crews have begun arriving in the Bahamas to deal with catastrophic storm damage there.
15,000 houses destroyed or underwater. Entire neighborhoods wiped off the map by Hurricane Dorian.
All of my family memories, everything that we've ever known as a people has been completely wiped out.
The local airport is 6 feet underwater. A local hospital destroyed, leaving a population of 70,000 people scrambling for food, water, shelter, and medicine.
Fox's Steve Harrigan. Divers have recovered all but one of the victims of that California dive boat fire. Jennifer Hamendi of the National Transportation Safety Board says crews are now documenting the wreckage in 65 feet of water.
And that documentation is occurring with side scan sonar, so that they are actually mapping the wreckage before it is moved.
Says they've also completed interviews with the 5 surviving crew members and given them drug and alcohol tests. America is listening to Fox News.
When you think about better water, think Kinetico softened water. Kinetico water conditioners work like no other, supplying a continuous flow of luxuriously soft water without disruption and without use of electricity. After all, better water flows from better thinking. Kinetico.
American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water. Call American Water Tech at 649-2301 or email info@americanwatertech.com.
The estranged husband of a Connecticut mom who's been missing for the last several months has been arrested again in connection with her disappearance.
Otis Doulos faces a new count of evidence tampering tied to his missing wife, Jennifer. The mother of 5 disappeared in late May. Doulos' attorney, Norm Battis.
We've pled not guilty to the pending charges. We intend to plead not guilty to these charges, and we look forward to a full day in court.
That hearing is a week from today. Doulos' comment on his ordeal was brief.
It's an exhausting fight. I love my children. That's about it.
Doulos and his girlfriend, Michelle Traconis, were charged with tampering and hindering prosecution after being identified on video dumping garbage bags thought by police to contain items with Jennifer Doulos' blood on them. They pleaded not guilty. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Billy Jack Kretzinger said he felt a burning sensation in his arm right after the executioner pushed the plunger on his lethal injection on the Texas death row last night. Kretzinger had been convicted of stabbing 2 women to death in Fort Worth, Texas, the Supreme Court refusing to spare his life based on his claim that he'd gotten lousy legal representation. Another hot car death recorded this week. A 3-year-old girl forgotten in the backseat of a car in suburban Phoenix. But within 6 years, a forgotten child warning system will be standard equipment on new cars.
It's already in some new vehicles sold in the U.S. Audible and visual alerts to check back seats every time a driver turns off the ignition. Now, 20 automakers have voluntarily agreed to install the alert system in all new vehicles by 2025. In an effort to stop heat stroke deaths, 37 children have died nationwide so far this year after being left alone in cars during hot weather. Tesla, the only automaker that didn't agree to the backseat check reminders. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
In New York, I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Whether you're going grocery shopping, taking the kids to the mall, or going to work, you need a reliable car that can take you where you need to go. A reliable car also needs reliable insurance. Let Nanbo Insurance make your auto insurance easy and uncomplicated. With Nanbo, you can also save big when you bundle up and insure your car, home, motorcycle, or business. Enjoy great savings up to 50%. Visit nanbo.com or call 477-9754 for more details.
GRMC's Neuroscience and Neurology Department treats a wide spectrum of disorders associated with the nervous system, spine, and brain. Some of the more common disorders include seizures, epilepsy, dementia, sleep disorders, migraine, and stroke, which is one of the leading causes of death on Guam. GRMC's neuroscience team is equipped with the latest technology and the finest neurological doctors. To make an appointment, contact GRMC Specialty Clinics at 645-5500.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to Tall Tales for Thursday, September 5th, 2019. I'm Daryl Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie, who is away. He'll be back in 32 days. That's the countdown. Bob Klitzkie will be back in this chair in 32 days. So do stay tuned, and thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon for Tall Tales. I'll be with you till 6 o'clock. And a lot in the news to talk about. And so if you've got something on your mind, feel free to give us a call here at 888-8255, and we'll put you on. And we'll see how. I won't put you on. We'll put you on the air, right? I have a story that I got just before leaving the house. National Review is a conservative magazine that was started by William F. Buckley, Jr., back in 1955. I had a friend when I was in college who interned there, and while she and I really didn't see eye to eye, we had lots of respect for each other because I thought her reasoning was and her motivation was solid, absolutely solid. The article is by Jim Garrity, entitled Washington Waits for a Trump Decision on Gun Violence Legislation. Okay, there I can hear myself better. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said today that he's waiting for the president to decide what kind of gun violence legislation he's willing to support. The White House is supposed to have an answer next week, but a big unresolved question is how long any particular position on guns from the president will last. Trump has two entirely contradictory instincts when it comes to gun laws, and he doesn't reconcile them particularly well. Trump simultaneously wants to be seen as, quote, doing something about mass shootings and wants to keep the support of the NRA and the country's gun owners. This is not a needle he can thread. Democrats and their allies in the media believe gun control, including banning particular kinds of firearms, is the only effective tool to prevent more mass shootings. Any legislation that does not include that will be dismissed as meaningless window dressing. Meanwhile, the NRA and most gun owners will see any step in that direction as punishing law-abiding citizens for the actions of the deranged and evil, and a step towards gun confiscation. In his the year 2000 book, The America We Deserve, Trump wrote, quote, I generally oppose gun control, but I support the ban on assault weapons, and I also support a slightly longer waiting period to purchase a gun. But in 2016, the National Rifle Association and gun owners put aside any lingering doubts and supported Donald Trump because he had the sterling and undeniable quality of not being Hillary Clinton. And he sounded like an ally, at least recently. When Trump stands before the NRA convention attendees, he usually says all the right things. He has appointed judges who recognize the Second Amendment, and his administration has generally pushed federal policy in a pro-gun direction. Then in March 2018, after the Parkland mass shooting, Trump held an hour-long televised meeting in the Oval Office with lawmakers of both parties. During that meeting, the president endorsed the assault weapons ban, endorsed background checks for private sales at gun shows, endorsed raising the age to purchase firearms to 21, and declared the top priority of the NRA since Trump's election, concealed carry reciprocity, quote, will never pass. And in parentheses, this bill would ensure that if you have a valid concealed carry permit in your home state, you are allowed to carry a concealed weapon in any state. Trump contended members of Congress were, quote, petrified of the NRA, and that he was not. Quote, they have great power over you people. They have less power over me. Also during that meeting, Trump contradicted his own vice president's assurances about due process and basically contended that the government should seize firearms from people it deems dangerous and go back and get legal justification later. Quote, take the firearms first and then go to court, Trump said. Quote, because that's another system. Because a lot of times, by the time you go to court, it takes so long to go to court to get the due process procedures. I like taking the guns early. This is the sort of talk that usually leaves NRA leaders and gun owners apoplectic. But the next day, Trump talked on the phone with leaders of the NRA, and eventually nothing came of his publicly expressed gun control, pro-gun control stances. Yeah, pro-gun control stances. Last month, after the shootings in Dayton and El Paso, Trump declared that, quote, Republicans and Democrats must come together and get strong background checks. But then 2 weeks later, after another phone call with the NRA's Wayne LaPierre, Trump said, quote, people don't realize we have very strong background checks right now. When it comes to gun legislation, it's not just a matter of what the president wants to do. It's a question of how long until he changes his mind. Sorry for the poor read on that, but you get the idea. Washington waits for a Trump decision on gun violence legislation. And that's if they're going to pass anything at all, right? The House could pass something that the Senate won't pass because the president has already signaled that he will not sign it. And then if you want to get something passed, what would that be? And so, Second Amendment is features are in play these days in the states. So that said, let's go on to Zami Katni. And today we've got two editorials in the Guam Daily Post. The editorial is entitled Time to Update Worker Compensation Rates. I believe this story was in yesterday's Post with the details. And for the PDN, they have a guest editorial from USA Today editorial board called Wealth of Oil Gas. Okay, and let's go ahead and run through these and see what they really mean to us here. Time to update worker compensation rates. From the Guam Daily Post, a proposal to update Guam's worker compensation rates for injury, disability, or death was introduced Wednesday. We agree it's time to bring this up. The rates haven't been updated for more than 30 years, says the legislation's chief sponsor, Senator Regine Bisco-Lee. She said her proposal, Bill 200, received input from attorneys, labor advocates, businesses, and insurers before it was introduced. Some of the proposed rates would nearly double the current levels. We agree workers who experience an injury or disability from a work-related incident should be compensated twice what the old rates were from 3 decades ago. The families of workers who lose their lives while on the job should be given a corresponding increase too, and that's the intent of the legislation. Quote, "This measure will deliver the first meaningful raise in 3 decades for workers injured on the job and for families of those whose injury results in death," Lee said in a press release. Some of the proposed rates are from a minimum of $150 to $310 a week for a work-related disability. The compensation for serious permanent disfigurement that's work-related would increase from $10,000 to $25,000. The compensation limit for a job-related injury or death would change from $100,000 to $206,570. And the funeral benefits for a worker's family would increase from $3,600 to $7,435. While still subject to further review during the lawmaking process, this is a welcome move for workers. It's good to know that when a job or workplace puts workers' safety at risk, there will be an improved financial safety net for them. It might not be a lot, but it's better than what it is now. This is one issue that workers' compensation advocates had hoped for. There are other worker safety nets that are lacking on Guam, such as required unemployment insurance in the event of joblessness. It might be time to put together an unemployment insurance legislation and a severance package legislation for longtime workers who lose their jobs, both in the public and private sectors. Often, senators' proposals focus on helping GovGuam employees. Private sector workers count on lawmakers to advocate for them, too. And it's an interesting viewpoint, because some of the same arguments that are made for increasing the cost per employee by minimum wage would apply here. Now, if there's an unsafe workplace, all workplaces, all employers carry insurance, workers' comp insurance. It's mandatory. And they pay that insurance, and they would be covered for those increases in Bill 200. But as the editorial continues to talk about other worker safety nets, such as unemployment insurance and severance package legislation. Now, getting into some areas that will have a different kind of economic impact, wide-ranging economic impact. Because as we see with the government of Guam, how difficult it is to, well, increase productivity, how expensive it is to sever an employee. And so the editorial seems to be suggesting that you would bring the kinds of protections of government workers who might be subject to political pressure to leave their job because they're being harassed, or because of some political expression of political preference during a campaign time, would then be severed from the workplace prior to becoming eligible for retirement. And there are not enough protections for the people to make sure that the government's own workforce can be updated. You know, over the span of a single worker's career, 30 years. You know, there's no shorter level span that would allow greater turnover, except in professional areas where you don't have a 30-year retirement horizon. So, the main thing I wanted to talk about here is that it's an editorial. You know, it affects all workers, but it's a routine matter. This is not headline news. This Bill 200 should be a typical bill filed by a committee chairperson to clean up outdated laws, and not a springboard to flag the expansion of entitlements to put a feather in her campaign cap. This is just the routine work of a senator. And I applaud her for that, but the editorial doesn't really point this out. This is a good example of what every senator down there should be doing, to update the laws. But it should not be to her credit and perhaps a springboard to more social safety net laws, if you kind of get what I mean. So let's go on to, and so for that, I am going to withhold my blue pen here. I'm not impressed. And taking a look over it. Thank you for those of you who are joining us on Facebook Live. Again, the telephone number here is 888-8255. You can make a call. I'm a little short of breath, and I'm trying to figure out why that is. Is it the aircon? Do I need to bundle up or what? And so, while Real Joe is a bit away from the phone, whoever's calling, I can see there he is. I see him flashing back in here. Before we go to the PDN Daily News editorial, wealth of oil and gas from USA Today. Think of the story. You know, if you get a chance, go and take a look at it. It talks about the wealth of the United States has tremendous wealth. The wealth is under its feet. I'm not going to lose that wealth on dreams on windmills. And that's what our president has said. And you know, one of the opportunities the nation lost out on just after the election of President Trump was for the U.S. to take the lead on the development of North Siberia oil and gas, the Arctic, opening up the Arctic oil fields, the Russian equivalent of the Alaska North Slope oil and gas reserves. That was why he was trying to lift the sanctions. And if you recall, Rex Tillerson had resigned his post as CEO of ExxonMobil to take the Secretary of State position. And he had even been awarded by President Putin for having sort of laid the groundwork for this partnership. But that would not be because of the remaining sanctions placed on Russia by the United States because of the Russian nation's adventures in Ukraine and the taking of Crimea, which kind of screwed it up for them. But think of this story. When we're talking about investing $600 million in the combined cycle power plant up in Dedido, and falling prices on renewable energy technology, retiring of nuclear power plants well before their time after their economics are becoming clearer, and the demographics of taxpayers supporting a greener world. If you're still looking at 20 or 30-year horizons for the usefulness of capital investments in fossil fuel power plants. You might want to think again. Consider that the Cabras plants have been in place for a while. They're burning fossil fuels, bunker fuel, bunker oil. But those power plants, before the end of their economic lifetime, the emissions standards have changed. And they changed in the mainland. They weren't extended out to Guam for decades. Now they are. And that's within the lifetime of those PD power plant units. And so the technology is going to change before this combined cycle plant reaches its life. Now, we may be forced to put it in just because of the demand for power to support the military buildup. And it may be that military buildup is being starved of its money. Let's go to line 1. See what's shaking on line 1. Welcome to Tall Tales. Half a day. Yes.
Sorry, my phone's been acting up. Let me turn the radio down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's better. So we were talking about the workforce and how the senator, which senator is it that's cleaning up the law?
Regine Bisco-Lee. Bill 200.
I agree to that because the labor laws in Hawaii, the union is really strong, and the thing about that is they're complaining because the wages are so high and it's affecting, I guess, the employers who they can hire. It seems to put limits on what they can do with their resources, and so in a sense, you feel worse for the employers or or the employees. From what I'm thinking is the majority of our economy seems to be held up by the middle class and small business owners. So we kind of want to encourage a strong middle class and small business owners. So to have, it's going to vary from state to state, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But the thing that is different in each jurisdiction is the federal government or even big business. We're talking about like internationally traded corporations, like for example now McDonald's or these big corporations. So the question is it constitutional? Is it allowable to have different set of rules or laws for large corporations with regards to, you should allow your employees to have XYZ or whatever the issue is. Let's say, for example, a lunch, without any doubt, that someone working for either the federal government, federal position, or for a large internationally traded corporation, they should be allowed to have a lunch. Let's say that would that be considered constitutional, or would that be from the start? Would that be a non-starter?
Well, you're sort of you've gotten onto about maybe 5 different topics, but the question you've just asked about workplace rights for all workers. There are standard laws, and they're extensions of laws that were started way back when to prevent the employment of children in dangerous work for 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, because that's how during the periods of rapid industrialization that basically capitalists who are building these factories and employing large numbers of immigrants, at least in the United States, but also or poor people in places like England or Italy, labor was exploited. They were used until they dropped. Steel workers would go and go to work, or coal miners would go to work, and you'd have one death a week in a typical factory from dangerous work, lack of safety gear or safe conditions. Even working in chicken plants these days, like in Mississippi, the repetitive motions of people working to dress those chickens on the assembly line, working with sharp knives to do this, to remove the same part of every chicken coming along. Excuse me, coming along. I can't get that word out, can I?
You drink?
Yeah, well, maybe that's what just did it. It did. So, anyway, the laws have been updated to make sure that people get breaks. It's not to go smoke a cigarette. It's to have a break. And that they have to be paid their wage that they would get and take home. Not they would be given a wage, but then the employer would say, provide lunch and then charge them a large amount for it. So all these are labor laws have been put out and refined as occupational safety and health, and also laws about what age you can work, in certain types of jobs, certain occupations, how many hours you can work in a week, having extra pay for like night differential or hazard pay or overtime. Those laws have been all extended, even the right to organize and workers' right to organize. And
that's
so
being discouraged, especially here in Guam, because is that the commercial?
Yeah, we've got a break to come up here. We'll continue this after the break, okay? So hang on, and we'll continue to do this. Okay, let's take that break, Real Joe, and we'll be back in just a few moments with more Tall Tales.
30 years ago, the very first Subway restaurant opened in Guam. Now, 15 restaurants later, Subway Restaurants is celebrating this milestone with a buy one, get one free offer every weekend, starting September 14th through October 12th. Come celebrate 30 years. Enjoy your favorite sandwich, salad, or wrap, all made with freshly sliced veggies and bread baked in every store. Take advantage of this buy one, get one deal. It's Subway Restaurants' way of saying thank you, Guam, for 30 wonderful years. Subway, make it what you want.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Two people agree to enter into a mentoring relationship. Are there rules, guidelines, even just suggestions for how to conduct mentoring? There are. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, I'm going to give you my take on how to set it up.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
You gotta try Mescla's featured special for September. Southern Spice Crispy Fried Chicken. Louisiana-inspired fried half chicken. Served with red beans and rice. Available in Agadia and in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
Okay, we're back with this question about labor conditions. I also wanted to toss in there that minimum wage laws have been passed so that people are not working because of the numbers of people who want to work, are willing to work for really low wages. So the government has passed minimum wage laws so that labor can't be taken advantage of in that way. And even we've got coming up in the next session, we hear that the minimum wage law for Guam may be raised. Now, on the employer's side, if they want good labor and they want to keep them, then they will offer benefits. Required health insurance for full-time employees. That is another public policy on labor. But then there's the downside of this is, so employers who can't afford it will simply say, I can't afford but 2 or 3 full-time workers and everyone else in my crew is going to be part-time. And they'll just hire more people, and the part-time workers, like in our tourism industry, they aren't hired for more than 32 hours a week or 28 hours a week, and so they work 2 jobs or maybe 3 jobs and have no benefits, and the government, taxpayers, are the ones to foot the bill for their medical care and for their indigent care if they retire without benefits. And so there's a balancing act here, and it's a pretty difficult one. And each economy has to go through this. On Guam, our economy doesn't float on the middle class and small business. It floats on the expenditures of the federal government through the government of Guam and the taxes of the government of Guam on many activities, including the tourism industry, but also the economic activity there. But it's not the same. Guam's economy does not float the same way as economies in the 50 states. It is very, very much this is a garrison town, and we also have very high eligibility for federal grants on a per capita basis. And so, and the middle class, the largest part of the middle class on Guam is the government of Guam employee base. It's 11,000 workers, and they're all paid above the average level in the private sector. So that's kind of where we are. And every time we make a move on labor laws for labor policy, the government considers changing the rules, then private sector really has to speak up and let the government know what kind of impact this will have, because we don't really have a good labor economist down at the Guam Department of Labor, but he can't carry the whole story. It's got to come out it's going to a businessmen who may change their investment patterns, or are marginal and they may drop out of the market entirely, or they see the cost of operations for labor side as rising when they would really prefer to get returns on the investment of their profits, to purchase more capital, tools and equipment that has a different return. And so those are the things that have to balance out. But to the person who's working, they just care whether they've got their pay is going to come out on time. They're not going to get injured. Their hours will stay steady, and they won't get harassed. They're not going to get groped or dragged into the back room and used as a sex slave or something. That sort of thing. What's that sound in the background there?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, you've got some, I don't know, it's like, are you in your car?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if I was back on the air.
Oh, yeah, you are. Yeah.
Okay.
Since we came back from our announcements. But, just the whole thing that you were saying about, you went over like I don't know, 5, 6 different topics. I was writing them down.
Yeah, the thing is, whenever these politicians, they talk about our economy, it's just confusing because it does, like you said, the model doesn't quite fit Guam as far as middle class, but there are some similarities because in a sense we do attempt to imitate stateside culture, stateside tradition, and so a lot of that's going to be middle class orientated. like oh, I'm going to go shop at Home Depot, or oh, I'm going to shop at or Ace. You know, if there's an Ace.
Sure, but those are consumption patterns, but we don't have the same kind of cost for housing, because our housing is more expensive to build on Guam because of the earthquake and typhoon requirements, or we have substandard housing. And then you have the average wage level is much lower than in the States.
But you're saying that the minimum wage was you're setting the minimum wage so that people can have what do they call it, living wage, and then the other side of that is the person I can only hire 2 people, and everyone else is going to be part time. The thing about that is that people can only that's not the career path. So they want to have retirement. They're going to have to look at some other way to survive after they're no longer working age, so to speak. So it's either going to be only Social Security, or you're going to have to find something in addition to Social Security.
But how far do you think people are going to progress if they're working 2 or 3 jobs that pay real close to minimum wage and there's no upward mobility because they're making beds? What kinds of jobs, in the hotels? And then you only get 28 hours or 32 hours, and then you have to stop. You're only limited to that number of hours, so you're going to take a second job. And then you're going to work all the way up until you can't work any longer, but the whole time you're not going to get increments. You're not going to get raises because it's not worth any more to the company.
I was thinking maybe there should be a town hall to speak about these issues in general and in more complex terms, because we don't quite understand the complexities a lot of the time, and how Guam, the model does not apply to Guam in many circumstances. But the thing is, if you try to focus on it, you have, your friends, your others say, hey, you're wasting your time. When you're not paid to worry about that stuff, you're electing these people to worry about that stuff. But the whole point is that they're not addressing a lot of these issues that we've touched on here.
I think they are. I think that you see, the government is not the one running the economy. The investors and people who are looking at business opportunities run the economy. What the government does is it puts parameters on the economy, so it's rules. And so with those rules, then once everyone knows what the rules are, you got to pay taxes, you got to pay minimum wage. You can pay higher if you want, and then
you're disappointed. You're disappointed that they weren't making these laws to clean up to address these issues more often. It wasn't a regular thing when it should be a regular thing to address these to update the laws, so to speak.
Yes, because we're paying the senators, and we're putting $8 million a year for the legislature to operate, and when you see a headline about a senator who's saying, yeah, I need to update this. We're going to update this law for the first time in 30 years. It shouldn't be a headline. It should be the kind of routine work that every legislator's office is doing, and because they haven't updated laws for 30 years, and they aren't even bothering.
Yeah. What I'm suggesting is maybe it would be a good idea to have a town hall to address that. It's just, hey, this should be more regularly occurrence. It shouldn't just be a headline, as you say. It should be a day-to-day occurrence. So that's what I'm talking about with regards to a town hall.
It's kind of what the senators, when they're campaigning, they kind of promise they're going to do this, that, and the other, and they get elected. But none of them are getting elected saying, I'm going to go back through and do the boring work of reviewing all the laws that come under my area as a chairman, as a member of the majority, and I get a chairmanship. I'm going to go through and I'm going to review all these mundane laws, and then we're going to start cleaning them up. Not a single one of them did. They say, I'm going to roll the taxes back. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. The sexy items, and that's what they concentrate on. The things that are going to give them some media profile that the media is going to say, yeah, they're working hard to get things done, and they're not really. This is
Kelly Younggirl would be someone who'd be interested in pursuing issues like that, or I'm not sure that Bob, maybe once in a while he'll touch on it, maybe, but I wonder.
Bob did.
Sorry?
Bob did. Yeah. He put a law together that said he put a bill that said I'm going to define for you and everyone what an adequate education should look like, and he put the bill together, and he put it out in the public, and no senator could vote against it because it was just too obvious. Because before the money would just be sort of spent willy-nilly according to the discretion of the director. And he said, you need to have these, this is how your budget should look. What do you need to address each of these items? And so there was some structure to the budget process for the Department of Education. And that was what he did when he was in. And he wasn't, I think he was majority during the time when he was in.
So that's serious. Vote Bob.
Well, I would love to see him go back in. I would. I told him that as a Democrat, staffer, I was telling him that on the street. I just love the way you are in there. And we're agreed on that. There are few of the senators down there who are interested in doing routine work, and that was what this article, the editorial today, reminded me of, and so I wanted to bring that out. Can I go? I'm going to go to another topic here on line 2, okay? But thank you so much for the call.
Appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye. Line 2, thank you for calling Tall Tales. You're on the air.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing my best.
I want to talk about minimum wage since that's coming up on the floor again.
Okay. What are your thoughts on minimum wage?
All right. So I propose that I'm a business owner, business person, and also member of the chamber and GHRA. And I see what's coming up, the increments for minimum wage increase. And being a business owner, I'm actually proposing that we move to raise it to $10 an hour starting December 1st this year, 2019.
And why is that?
Well, I feel the 50-cent raises that they're doing, which will be in effect in March of next year, and then another 50 cents in 2021. The consumer, the everyday person, they're not going to see it. They're not going to see the value of that. It's not going to make any improvements in their lives. 50 cents is not going to do much. And that also, they're going to make it in effect starting next year. The people actually need it now, and they need more than 50 cents. And being a business owner, I'm a proponent of increasing it to 10.
That
people
was
are struggling out there. They need to have money in their pockets.
That was part of the testimony that was put out at the time when this was heard. And even in previous proposals back when BJ was still in the legislature, that because of the increases in the cost of living on Guam, there should be a bigger jump. And what you're saying is, actually, the minimum wage bill that is ready to go on the floor during this session is a compromise, which was a lower level than originally proposed several years ago. And since then, with the increase in the BPT, the prices have jumped. Retail prices have jumped. For people who are making minimum wage, and so this is almost an outdated bill. It's almost
50 cents
obsolete.
is not going to do anything for anybody.
Yeah.
And that too next year. No, people need the money now. And I would say the lawmakers, it would be in their best interest that December 1st, let's give the people a nice Christmas gift. $10 an hour.
Well, you know, there's another reason why that makes sense, and that is because of the Trump tax cut was intended to cover costs of doing business. It wasn't. It was intended to put more money into the pockets of everyone, and so less to the government, and so.
Well, I think maybe he might have put more money in our pockets, but then the government took it out.
Yes, and
through other means.
Yes, because here on Guam, it had a direct impact on our taxes and on our on the revenues of the government, but it wasn't. The government was not paying attention to do what it needed to do to cut the cost of the government to match the drop in the revenues. They said, oh, it's easier to just raise the taxes and we'll get to it later. And they never have. They haven't gotten to it later.
Right.
So
we need to do it now. It needs to happen now. People can't wait till March next year for 50 cents. They need, I think $1.75 is not much. $8.25, we can jump to 10, and they need it now. So we got September, October, November for businesses to get whatever they need to in order, and December 1, let's give it to the people.
Wow.
They need it. You got everyday people who are working 2 jobs and still can't do it. They still can't make it.
Yeah, that's that.
I don't think we don't have time for a Hay study or any study. There's no time for that.
No,
I think 10 is very reasonable. 8.25, you know.
Well,
to round it up to 10.
Thank you very much for your call this afternoon. We're gonna file that, and we're gonna get back to this question in the coming weeks as we approach the next session. So thank you for your call this afternoon.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Joe, let's go to that long-promised break, and we'll come back right afterwards for another 5 minutes or so.
We understand what matters to you because at Docomo Pacific, we're a family too. With the Now Family program, Mom, Dad, and kids stay connected on the latest devices the whole family can enjoy. For just $155 a month, get 3 lines with 30 gigs of 4G LTE data each, and endless use of your favorite apps without affecting your monthly data bucket. Add more, get more, save more. Docomo Pacific, better together. Some conditions apply.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
And welcome back to Tall Tales for Thursday afternoon. Week is zipping along here, but of course that's because we enjoyed our Monday. And we've got, when we woke up this morning, we woke up to some pretty interesting news. And we haven't gotten around to that yet. One of them is that Delegate St. Nicholas has come back out and staked out his position on the allegations being made against him. He is challenging anyone, whether it's the current accuser or anyone else, to simply file a formal complaint at the appropriate locations instead of trying to smear him in the press. And personally, I think that's exactly the way it should go. If he's got something to say, take it to the authorities and let them take it from there. So I'm not going to get into that part of it. I just wanted to mention it. But the one that really gets me is that $243.2 million in Guam build-up projects are delayed as the funds are diverted to Trump's border wall project, and the firing range timeline is extended. So these project timelines extended for 1 year, which means the money will not be spent on Guam in the next year. So we're not going to get the economic activity, we're not going to get the taxes that derive from increased economic activity. We're not going to need to hire more workers. The workers we have may not have a project to work on. Machine gun range, 50.1 million. Earth-covered magazines, storage areas for munitions, 52.2 million. Road interchanges on base, so highway construction, 2.5 million. Water well field, 56.1 million. The development of more water wells on Guam, $56.1 million delayed. The Navy tie-in to local utilities. This was the one that's supposed to be that instead of the Navy pumping Fina Lake water to the north, and the government of Guam pumping water from the northern well fields to the south, they would tie in and then put meters and then simply not have to transport it as far. Maybe there would be a bit less wastage or leakage, and they would meter and cross-reference and meter, so it would be net of what's going between the military provision and local. That Navy tie-in to local utilities, $37.2 million, is going to be delayed, and that's also for the new base, Nick Tams. Munitions storage, $35.3 million and $9.8 million for 2 munitions storage projects, besides the earth-covered magazines. So just that in itself, let's see, 45, $97 million just for munition storage that's going to be delayed. What's not going to be delayed are housing projects, military housing projects or family care facilities, because they are bringing more ships and detachments being stationed on Guam, not just assigned here on a temporary basis. So this is the interesting, important part about this is we shouldn't be taking, nobody should be doing any victory laps for fighting the military to a standstill. And we'll come back to this after the top of the hour. If the military is going to build it, then these are revenues, these are investments in plant and facilities that are going to provide economic benefit to the civilian side and revenues for the government of Guam. Jobs and and revenues and economic activity, that's missing. Now, last year we lost $200 million that were diverted from projects ready to go and spent on Tinian instead. So now we're talking about $443 million in 2 years of reduced economic activity. Now, our elected officials are expecting that money, $400-some million, almost $500 million of expenditures that are delayed. Yeah, it's 4:59. We have lots more to talk about after the top of the hour, so do stay tuned. I'll be back after Fox News at 5 and the great halftime show that we feature for you every day, weekdays here on The Point. We'll come back with more Tall Tales in just about 6 minutes. Do stay tuned.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Dorian gets stronger. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The National Hurricane Center reporting the storm has regained Category 3 hurricane status as it turns offshore from the southeast coastline. The barrier islands of Georgia and South Carolina getting the storm surge at high tide.
Right now, we think that we could see upwards of 5 to 8 feet of inundation along the coast of particularly South Carolina from Isle of Palm to Myrtle Beach, even 4 to 7 feet other parts of South Carolina and North Carolina.
That's hurricane specialist Robbie Berg at the National Hurricane. The police department in Charleston, South Carolina says parts of the city are flooding, urging residents to shelter in place. The eye of the storm now about 100 miles south of Charleston. Relief efforts are underway in the Bahamas, bashed by Dorian earlier this week. Salvation Army on the ground there. Major Clarence Ingram telling Fox News at night.
It's really overwhelming, but we are able to begin to supply food and clothing and some emergency relief to the people that we are able to reach out and contact at this point.
20 people confirmed dead in the Bahamas from Hurricane Dorian. A car bombing has rocked Kabul, Afghanistan, near a neighborhood housing the U.S. Embassy. A U.S. envoy has been in Kabul briefing the Afghan government on a deal he says he's reached in principle with the Taliban to end America's longest war. 3 people are dead, reported dead in this latest car bombing, 30 others injured. A blast on Monday killed 16 people and injured 100 others. The Taliban claimed responsibility for that blast. U.S.-China trade talks delayed. China's Commerce Ministry says talks at ending the tariff war have been pushed back a few weeks, but will be held in early October. Those talks had been tentatively scheduled for later this month. America is listening to Fox News.
We can't buy this house.
What?
It has 4 bathrooms. Just think of all the bathtub rings, water spots, and stains, plus the cleaning products I'll have to buy.
Didn't I tell you? The house comes with a non-electric Kinetico water treatment system. We'll have clean, soft water throughout the house, protect the water-using appliances, keep the tub, showers, and sinks looking like new, and help our skin, hair, and clothes look and feel great, too. The house even includes a Kinetico drinking water system.
A Kinetico system in the house? We'll take it.
American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Kelaguen Hapa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mescla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
The diplomatic standoff between the U.S. and Iran escalating.
President Trump says he's open to meeting with the Iranian president at the upcoming UN General Assembly in New York. But Iran says there will be no negotiations until the U.S. lifts those crippling sanctions. The U.S. imposed even more sanctions on an oil shipping network with ties to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. And for the first time, the U.S. is offering a reward of up to $15 million to anyone who provides information that leads to the disruption of the Guard's finances.
As Fox's Kristen Fisher, Iran's president has announced his country will begin developing nuclear centrifuges, which would be a violation of the nuclear agreement signed with several countries, but which the U.S. is no longer a party to. Texas has put a convicted double murderer to death. Billy Jack Krutzinger said he was at peace and looking forward to being with Jesus just before he was given a lethal injection last night. He'd stabbed an elderly woman and her daughter to death in Fort Worth, Texas, some 16 years ago. A couple hurt in the El Paso mass shooting a month ago, now suing Walmart.
Guillermo and Jessica Garcia filed the suit. He has undergone several surgeries for wounds suffered in the August 3rd shooting and remains hospitalized in critical condition. Jessica Garcia was also hospitalized but has been released. They say they were shopping with their children when the gunman opened fire, killing 22 people and wounding many others. They're seeking a restraining order, which would require the company, which has begun renovating the store, to preserve evidence from the shooting. A Walmart spokesman says they have worked meticulously with federal and local authorities. When he was arrested, the gunman told police he was targeting Mexicans. Lisa Lacera, Fox News.
Asian stocks closing Thursday mixed. Dow futures are nearly 200 points higher. Wall Street Wednesday, the Dow up 237 points. The Nasdaq added 102. The S&P 500 31 points higher. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Sing, dance, and jive with the feel-good jukebox musical Mamma Mia. Presented by World Theater Productions, featuring international guest artists, YouTube sensation AJ Raphael.
Hop a day, this is AJ Raphael.
And Dee Dee Magno Hall from Steven Universe.
Hop a day, this is Dee Dee Magno Hall.
Come and see us at the UOG Cabo Fieldhouse on September 6, 7, and 8.
Get your tickets now at WTPGuam.com. Enhance the theater experience.
Tickets are also available at GNC and 76 Circle K.
30 years ago, the very first Subway restaurant opened in Guam. Now, 15 restaurants later, Subway Restaurants is celebrating this milestone with a buy one, get one free offer every weekend, starting September 14th through October 12th. Come celebrate 30 years. Enjoy your favorite sandwich, salad, or wrap, all made with freshly sliced veggies and bread baked in every store. Take advantage of this buy one, get one deal. It's Subway Restaurants' way of saying thank you, Guam, for 30 wonderful years. Subway, make it what you want.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome back to Tall Tales for Thursday afternoon. I'm Daryl Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie. He's off island. He'll be back in 32 days. Count them, 32. By the time we roll into Monday next week, it's going to be under a month. So thank you very much for tuning in and for your curiosity of just what might be shaking here on Tall Tales for a Thursday afternoon, the 5th of September. Before the break, we were talking about the amount of money that will not be spent over the next, well, this year and next year. How much money was not spent, military construction money. $200 million this year, this fiscal year, 2019. And in 2020, now we're being told that $243.2 million for next year's construction will be deferred. That's $443 million not spent. And if you are someone who has been planning to, ramp up and make business, helping the United States military build up its facilities, replace facilities here on Guam, this has to be major Excedrin time. You made all these plans, and now you may have to lay people off. Now, maybe it'll be good for the Guam economy because we're going to have construction workers who are going to need to be hired to do stuff off base. But will there be enough money in the economy if these activities are not going on? Will our economy contract because of the loss of MilCon budget? Guam has been sort of floating on. We talked, years ago, we were talking about military buildup being like $8 billion, right? Oh, yeah. But consider that the military construction budget on Guam is somewhere around $200 to $300 million a year. And we don't see it because it's inside the fence. Replacing housing, resurfacing runways, laying in new water wells and water tanks, building new electrical exchanges, replacing power poles, laying in new sewer facilities, updating, just like we have to outside. And we've seen that. GWA has been updating its water storage tanks. It's been laying out new transmission lines. It's, GPA and the new power plant. Because all infrastructure needs to be refreshed. It comes to the end of its economic life and needs to be refreshed. And so the old family housing gets torn down on base and gets replaced. Now, a week ago or so, I was telling you that I'm going to finish summarizing the new Marine Commandant's planning document, the orders for basically the next 4 years, as long as he's Commandant, how he's going to take the United States Marine Corps in a different direction, and how that document may be indicating how the Marine mission on Guam will change. And maybe we won't get the same kind of military buildup. Now, hold that. Just kind of hang it on the branch for a moment. Because that was talking about that's the overall impact on the economy of Guam by annual spending by the Department of Defense to maintain and upgrade their facilities. Okay, but we didn't get $200 million worth of activity in 2019, and we look forward to not getting $243 million of economic activity in 2020. Now, I'm going to go to a related subject, and that is the Chamorro bones yield new information to scholars. And it's page 5 of today's PDN by Bruce Lloyd. So I'm not going to read the article, just going to sort of give you the highlights, because there's 5 related articles, and I want you to kind of see the picture as I see it. So they're talking about there's a protrusion in the skull of some 600 skulls that have been recovered from digs on Guam, and so there's some new information coming from that. And it's sort of the field of archaeology. As more remains and artifacts are dug up and taken into a lab and studied and cross-referenced with others, and these sites are mapped out and examined closely, but basically torn up, right, to make room for hotels or new sewer line and agate or whatever it might be, right? As this happens, the field of archaeology has a better picture of what the pre-contact, the Laddie period, and before the Laddie period, inhabitants of the island looked like, and what they ate, and what they, how long they lived, and things like that. So this is good, that these sorts of studies are being done, and that's kind of what is the big deal over the base construction, because they're saying don't disturb these sites. So in today's PDN on page 7, the headline is Prutehi Litekzan. Put stop, top built up, put stop. I think it's supposed to be put a stop to build up construction up on top of the cliff. And its community organization, Prutei Lititsan Save Ritidian, delivered a letter this week to Patrick Lujan, Guam State Historic Preservation Officer, requesting that he object to further action at Northwest Field, and that the training range complex should be halted, quote, due to inadequate background research, the desecration of our ancestral burials, and the permanent destruction of our land, endangered species, and invaluable resources. And they're asking to invoke Stipulation 13 of the 2011 Programmatic Agreement. It's a document between historic preservation and the military regarding the buildup's effect on historic sites. And down further, it says the Department of Defense demonstrating that they have no reservations about continuing the erasure of our history and culture. The military has no plans to stop the desecration and has lied to the community about following its obligation to practice cultural sensitivity. And Lujan stated on Wednesday that his office will look into the matter. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of hold that thought. I'm going to go to the next one, and that is something I mentioned yesterday. And this is also in today's PDN on page 21. And it's a letter by Eloy Hara to the PDN, and it's entitled Northwest Field Picked After Pagat Protests. And this was a point I was making the other day, that the reason that the Northwest Field firing ranges are being built is because they're not being built at Pagat. And it's just long story short, right? Just remember that. Last night, Bob Klitzkie and I were having a chat over a story that appeared in PNC News First back in August of 2019, entitled Concerns Expressed Over Military Construction Projects. And I'm going to go a bit through this. There's a healthy debate among Guam's leaders on whether the ongoing military buildup would be good for the island or not. 2 projects set for development on Andersen Air Force Base have raised some concerns within the community about their effects on the environment and cultural resources. And so then also Andersen South, Urban Combat Training Complex site is one of 2 projects slated for development by Naval Facilities Engineering Command and will be used by the U.S. Marine Corps for training. Because these activities involve walking over terrain and moving heavy field equipment, the memo says there is a high likelihood that surface artifacts may be dislodged over the course of these exercises. And 5 historic sites have been identified within a project area. And then Maria Hernandez, who's a member of the cultural and environmental advocacy group Prutei Lititsan, says she is concerned about its effects on cultural resources. Quote, these areas are proposed for data recovery, and what data recovery means is they're basically going to strip the area of the artifacts and place them in another area. And Prutei Lititsan, our stance has always been to preserve them in place. She added the artifacts that have undergone data recovery would have to be stored in a cultural repository. However, such a facility on island does not yet exist and is still being developed by the University of Guam. In addition, Hernandez raised further concerns about NAVFAC's other project, which involves the construction of several water well facilities on Andersen and how the additional wells would affect the island's aquifer. With that rise in population, there would be an increase in demand on the aquifer, about 1.2 million gallons more than it's currently pumping. With that increase, there's a risk for saltwater intrusion, and this will affect the cleanliness of our drinking water. So for those who aren't aware, our northern lens aquifer provides 80 to 90% of our island's drinking water. So this is something extremely troubling to us. And then she urged the community to submit their comments on the projects, which can be found on the legislature's website under the Guam Buildup tab. Comment period will be open until October 9th. And PNC reached out to Guam State Historic Preservation Office, who could not comment on the developments by news time. This was PNC's story back on August 28. Now, Bob Klitzkie pointed out to me that Maria Hernandez is on the staff of Senator Kelly Marsh. I didn't call down there to confirm this, but I think I know Maria Hernandez. I think I know her, and I know her as being very capable and very earnest and sincere and a capable advocate. And she's in good company too, because the other members are also well-read and prepared to take their fight to the military. But this was something that I had put together in my discussion for Bob, and I'm going to go ahead and share that with you. This was like 12:30 last night, and my reaction is, that's news. This is concerns expressed over military construction projects. That's news. Concerns expressed. If the advocacy group has only one possible response to leave in place, is that the stated policy of the government of Guam with respect to development of property, such as Chamorro Land Trust properties, the Guam Ancestral Land Commission properties, and private lands, like new hotels, homes, underground infrastructure? This is really the question. It's not a matter of jumping up and objecting to what the military is doing. Is that, do we have standards in place that we can point to and say, if you're not following our standards, you're violating your own federal guidelines? But do we have those standards, and do we enforce those standards? And we know this. We know this because Commander Naval Forces Marianas, in an exasperated moment, and not just the last one, but the ones before, whenever they're pushed to the point of exasperation, they say, is this a standard that you're imposing on your own self? They're not going to tell us how to do it. But we're forgetting this, and I want to remind everyone right here and now. If Retidian was given back to the original landowners, would that same standard apply? Would the government of Guam go in there and say, you can't develop this property because it's too culturally important and we don't have any plans for it, so all we want to do is for you to leave it in place. Just don't touch it because we say so. Would Guam be willing to swap land to the military the same size as Andy South or Northwest Field, the area on top of the cliff, for preservation purposes? Would we be willing to take land that the government of Guam owns or controls or acquire by eminent domain as the government of Guam, some sizable pieces of land for the military to use where we don't have any objections to them being, developed, bulldozed, and built in cement and roads and whatnot for their purposes, so that we can designate these areas as cultural properties that need to be left alone until we have the money to study them, and until the archaeology advances to a point where we know what we're looking at. Remember that first article about the on page 5 I was saying about new Chamorro bones yield new information to scholars. But are we pushing that? Have we been pushing that? Have we put money into the archaeology of the Chamorros on Guam so that we can really glean the information out of these sites and stay one step ahead of development? And shouldn't the efforts of legislative staff be to help accelerate GWA plant replacement, the waterworks, replacing their water lines to reduce the loss of pumped and treated water so that no more wells would even be necessary? We're losing half of the water that's pumped up. The military wouldn't have to pump up 1.2 million gallons of water if we were the water that we're already pumping. If we weren't losing half of that, we could just sell it to them. They wouldn't have to develop. They wouldn't have to drill wells even close to the edge of the aquifer. That's very risky. Not to us, but to them. Why would they? What are the risks of drilling wells in Northwest Field in that aquifer, which is on the edge of the aquifer? How about the water that's in the middle of the aquifer that's very deep? And that's the one that's sitting up there behind Kaiser Housing in Dedido, between there and Basula Road. The well field there that goes by the place where we've been staging our metal waste, and the municipal golf course, and then across Marine Drive on the military land, they have their wells there that pump water up into Anderson. It's a big field of water, and there's water wells all the way up towards Woostig Road, and those are in the middle of the aquifer, and it's deep, and we don't have to worry about saltwater intrusion. But half the water that's pumped up is lost in leaky pipes. We pump it up, and we treat it, and it leaks out before it gets to the homes and businesses. You know, how about that? And as a legislative staffer, she's in a position to push this. You know, I have here, 12:30 at night, I'm thinking, gosh, just bitch, you know? Not using the power of the offices that we now hold to establish island-wide cultural preservation standards that would apply to both federal and territorial permits for construction. You get my point? Well, let's see what's cooking. Maybe this caller on line 1 wants to talk about how to cook spaghetti. Line 1, you're on the air. Welcome to Tall Tales.
Yeah, Daryl, not quite about spaghetti, but just wanted to follow up on something you brought up a few minutes earlier regarding the letter that was in today's paper from Mr. Hara. Appreciate that you brought it up, but with respect, I think you glossed over 2 important points that he brought up in his letter. One, the one that was the more interesting of the two to me, is, if I remember what he wrote correctly, he raised the question of what is the issue, given that when the island objected to the firing range being placed on Paget, it was suggested that Northwest Field is the place where the firing range should go instead. So if I remember what Mr. Hara wrote correctly, he was saying or asking, why are we complaining about the fact that the military is doing the very thing that we asked the military to do?
That's right. I've got the article right in front of me. Why are we now condemning the military for doing exactly what we local objectors wanted them to do? And this is why I bring it up. I want people to go back and read this article, because he is absolutely right. We objected to Paget knowing that Finnegadzin and Northwest Field were both the alternates. And so we won, right? And the ones who objected to Paget won. But we got what we asked for, and that's Northwest Field. And the state of archaeology being what it is, the surveys didn't pick up on these sites, these large village sites, and there's more of a sensitivity to that now. But do we have standards in the government of Guam that say, if you come across a large village site, there will be no development until that's all dug out, or we want to cover it with 6 feet of soil, or whatever the deal is, right? Because they could do that. They could just say, okay, we're gonna put 3 feet of soil. It's gonna come out of the quarry over on Iseng Song Road, and we're gonna cover it. We're gonna document that it's here, and 50 years from now, we'll dig it up.
Right. And, a second point he brought up, which is a bit more of a subtle one, and I hope I'm getting his intent correctly, was he was kind of asking a question about the extent to which Pauget is considered a sacred site from the standpoint of the amount of trash that's being dumped there. So my interpretation, these are my words, not his, my interpretation of what I thought he was asking is, where is the hue and cry from anybody on Guam about how trashy the entrance to the Pauget Cave area looks? How come we're not complaining about that as much as we're complaining about the positioning of the firing range at Northwest Field?
Yeah, that's actually a separate question. It's a good challenge to those who have a full head of steam up for the preservation and respect of culturally important sites, in that some of that energy should really be directed towards the maintenance of those sites. Thank you very much for bringing this up and for amplifying those 2 points, because it really needs to be done. Yeah.
Right. Just trying to get some balance with the entire bigger question of what all of this means to us on the island.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to do too, because it is a bigger question. It's not just one site in isolation, or one Lusong in isolation. Thank you so much.
Right. Sure thing, Joe.
Okay. Let's take a break here, and then we'll come back. We've got calls on lines 2 and 3. Thank you. Hang on, and we'll be right back after this.
Live the balanced lifestyle. Take Care Insurance offers proven wellness and fitness programs to encourage individuals and families to live a healthy, balanced lifestyle through preventative care, being active, eating right, relaxing and unwinding, and being socially connected. They have the island's largest offering of free fitness classes and health education programs for all ages. Join the movement. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram, or visit takecareasia.com to learn more.
Are you ready for some football? The Ray Gibson Show has got your NFL fix every Friday on Sports with Blake. Be a part of the action by going to yahoo.com's Fantasy Sports Pro Football Pick'em. Join League 3384 with the password Ray Gibson. Choose your team name and get your game on. Winners get a chance to win some awesome prizes that get you through the NFL season. The NFL Picks on the Ray Gibson Show is brought to you by Current Guam.
Hitting those balls right out of the park. Let's go on to line 2 and see what's shaking there. Is this the call about the how to cook spaghetti?
No.
Line 2.
Yeah, Darren, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Anyway, so I just wanted to, I heard a caller earlier about the minimum wage. Just want to let them know that you don't need the government to tell you how much you want to pay your employees. If you wanted to pay employees $10, you should do it right away. You don't need the government. But another thing I want to report is poachers got away last night. They were fishing at the Serenity Beach Marine Preserve.
Mm-hmm.
And we coded in the Coast Guard responds because Gov Guam can't handle it. They have conservation officers, but they can't handle the marine preserves. They don't have a boat, so they rely on the Coast Guard. So what had happened was the Coast Guard comes up and gets my GPS readings because I coded in already, so they're responding. And then they leave. So I call back and said, hey, what's going on? The poachers are still there. They said, we're ready back at port. And what had happened was they coded in our GPS coordinates, and they said we weren't in the preserve. I said, it's not us. It's the guys in the preserve that you're supposed to be looking at. But I'm realizing now that the Coast Guard, a lot of them are off island. workers, and they don't know the names of the beaches here. They don't know Serena Beach, Castro's, Synapson. So I just want to put that out. It would help if they know the Chamorro names of the beaches here and the areas, especially the preserves, because I was pulled over 2 weeks ago, and I was up at Coco Palm, and that's not a preserve. But the guy, the captain of the boat, the Coast Guard, had to check if I was in the preserve. I said, geez, there's only 5 preserves here. This is not the preserve, but he had to, go into the computer or whatever, call somebody and ask if this is the preserve. So that's why I'm realizing they don't know. These guys are offhand. They don't know. They're here. They're really doing a good job, and they're helping Gov Guam. But one of the reasons why they got away is because they didn't know where Serena Beach is.
Well, let me ask you something. When the preserves were established, were they established in a way that provided definitive boundary coordinates so that it could be defined by the boundary coordinates? Because it doesn't matter what it's called as long as it's an activity area that's defined almost like survey, right? So if you're within this area, it doesn't mean that there's going to be even when they're talking about the area that's supposed to be closed off when the Finnegadson range is being used, it should be just by coordinates and not by, flashing lights and whatnot.
Both, because a lot of the Micronesians, and I'm sorry to say, but they're the ones. Last night was the Micronesian boat.
Well, why is it that there's no local enforcement?
Because the locals are doing something else. They're not fishing anymore. There's only a few locals who just subsistent fish.
No, I meant
Micronesians. If you look at all the stores here,
I meant
Micronesians.
Local law enforcement, Gov Guam.
They don't have. They have them. We have like a dozen conservation officers. They don't have a boat. How are they supposed to go out there and check it? Like the Paddy Point, Serena area, you need a boat to go check that. You can't just see it from the shore. So it was just heartbreaking because the first one we called in, the crew there was pretty smart. They caught the guys because, of course, they're poaching, so they're hiding themselves. And the ocean is huge. I mean, it seems like Guam is small, but it's super dark out there, and their boats are low profile, so you can't see them unless you come in to like 100 feet close to them. Then you can see them. But one of my points is they need to know Guam, Pneumatic Bay, just the local stuff that we have already that's written, dive sites. They need to know those names because when we call it in, they came to us where we're not into preserve, so they had to verify if we're in the preserve. Guam guy says, nope, that's not a preserve. They split. And then I call back up and say, hey, what's going on? The poachers are still here. And they says, nope, they coded in and that they weren't fishing. Said, that was me. I wasn't in the preserve. The guy next door was in the preserve.
Man.
And even if you launch out at Ganya Marina, the sign that shows where the preserves are and all that, you can't read it. It's probably, I don't know how long it's just not being maintained. It's just so sad, I tell you.
This is a problem whenever a law is or a new program is proposed. It might have some startup money from the feds, like, okay, here's this aluminum boat with the inflatable gunnel, right? It's bigger than it's bigger. It's almost like it's wearing an inner tube around its edge, right?
Nice boat.
Yeah, nice. And then you see them after like 3 or 4 years. You see them up in a motor pool area in Teason, and then they sit there for 4 or 5 years, and they're just beautiful aluminum boats. But there's no maintenance money.
Yes.
The
Coast Guard. I just want to thank them because a boat was stranded. Sure enough, Gov Guam out of Agana responded, but the engine was broken. But right beside him was the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard was the one who took over.
Yeah, the Coast Guard is equipped and trained, and their equipment is maintained. They're ready.
So you need to call the Coast Guard if you're out there. Don't call the Guam Rescue. Because the Guam Rescue, believe it or not, their response time is more than 2 hours.
Well, they
Coast
may.
Guard is instant.
It may be that the Guam contingent should be the ones to assist the Coast Guard in the response, to coordinate and to assist the Coast Guard. If they're not familiar with an area, to be able to do what they're supposed to do. I mean, it's
someone called in earlier and they mentioned that they needed to readdress the hours of the fireman and the fire rescue and whatever. Because if you look at it now, Agate Marina, Agana Marina, there's personnel in there. And all they do is obviously sleep. They work 12-hour shifts or 2 days or whatever. They're in there. You never see them.
Yeah, it's a kind of a nationwide problem. It's a nationwide problem. We've come to expect that firemen will be ready to go, and so their jobs are set up in such a way that they will be always ready to go, and it doesn't really matter what they're doing as long as they're ready to go. And
I don't know about the fire departments, but I'm talking specifically of the Agate Rescue and Agana Rescue.
Especially if they don't have boats.
There's police in Agana.
Yeah.
But it's like, geez, you see these fishermen, they only have 2 ports to come in. You see them every day, and you already know the ones who are the nothing happens.
Yeah, it is a. Are we getting our money's worth out of these law enforcement personnel and fire department being, and rescue being a form of, Department of Public Safety? I grew up in that era when it was Department of Public Safety. Since it was separated, it seems that they got really Pollyanna on us, and they want to. The jobs don't evolve with the requirements of the community. It only evolves with the refinement of salary and benefits. It doesn't really relate back to the equipment. And
it's just the preserves alone was so sad. Just so sad how the preserves are loaded with fish.
Well,
and they just walked away. They just walked right into it, pick all the lobsters they want, all the lugua. No one's there to watch them except us, because we can't see them.
Well, thank you very much for bringing this up.
Because the reason why they got away is because the personnel really need to learn about Guam. When we tell them they're at the Serena Beach, that's where they should be going.
But also, it would really help if there are people who are on duty on the Gov Guam side who are familiar with these places, who could in real time assist with communication and with equipment, help direct.
They asked them. It's just, even the dispatcher was so sad.
We just lost your call. But thank you very much for your call. Somehow the line just dropped off. Got a caller on line 3 waiting. Line 3, you're on the air with Tall Tales.
Hey, good evening, Daryl. How you doing?
Just fine. Who's this?
This is Jack.
Jack? Hi, Jack. Man, it's been a while.
I had I'm like that character in that show Beetlenut Juice. You say my government name 3 times in a row real fast, I have to call in.
Well, I didn't realize I was using your name in vain. So, but anyway, Jack.
That's my government name there.
I'm glad you're on. What are you thinking about today?
Oh no, I heard you talking about cultural sensitivity, and I was just wondering if you know the Native American rain dance. Do you know why it's 100% effective?
Why is that?
Because they don't stop doing it until it rains. Now that, I tell you that to let you in on the perspective of cultural sensitivity. Just because you label it doesn't mean it is. You know, and we just have to remember that no matter where that shooting range is, if it happens to be on Guam, it'll always be a cultural sensitivity thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
It won't
sure.
be a practical thing. It'll always be a cultural sensitivity thing. So I was just wondering if you know which senator is in charge of the cultural sensitivity of my wallet.
Let's see. There may be one senator who is the chair of the committee that will handle the legislation having to do with cultural sensitivity, and another one who is responsible for the enforcement of cultural sensitivity. You know, a different agency. So I believe it's Senator Kelly Marsh is in charge of cultural sensitivity, but you might need to.
Yeah, so we all need to just submit our wallets there and have them look at how empty they are and predicate off of that. But
how can it be empty? They're going to spend $948 million in the coming year, and they're just happy and patting themselves on the back at a job well done, and it doesn't seem to faze them that in the same newspaper, basically the same news cycle of 365, that $243 million in expected expenditures are not going to happen during that same time period.
All I know is that they're not lowering the business privilege tax, and then they're bumping up they're giving like a $10 raise or $15 minimum raise.
No, it's only 2 times 50 cents over the next.
It's not going to help me. The only people it helps is the government themselves when they get that payroll increase tax coming in. I just can't for the life of me figure this out. First they say that's the Trump tax cuts that did us in, and they raise the taxes, and they're going to raise the minimum wage, which increases the income tax pull in for them. It's like a no-win situation for me, and I disagree that it's the private sector that runs the economy. I wish it did somehow, but you know it isn't. It's not. It's know we got some government interference here. It's not a government regulation.
It's not government interference. The government defines the rules under which you are free to make a business. You may say defines the rules. I say manipulates the rules. Well, they create them. If there are rules, the rules are created by and enforced by the government.
But here's the deal. It's not getting cheaper living here in Guam.
No.
And it's not doing. And when you say about the government having I don't mind if the government helped the high end of the middle class, but the brain power isn't there. The brain power isn't there to match the income. And so that's what frustrates me. When you want to raise and you infuse raise of government employees, there must be some brain power behind there.
Oh yeah.
Not just a raising. It doesn't do anything to.
This was the problem. This was the problem with the Hay studies, because they were going through and saying, what does it take to attract someone to want to take this kind of a job? If we want to attract somebody to this GovGuam job, what will we have to pay in order to fill this position? But the assumptions were unrealistic, because first off, you're not recruiting people in the States to take the job. You're recruiting them from here. And second off, it's a government job, not a private sector job, and you don't release people that when you don't need them any longer, or when they become unproductive and then have to re-recruit for that position. So it's not.
As employers and employees, there's only one thing that you should know for the past 40 or 50 years about working or employing here in Guam. and that's our trade-offs. It's not about how much money you make or whatever. It's the trade-off. If you live in a big city, you're trading off for a lot of comforts, a lot of shows and glitzes. That's just it. But you're trading it off for sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it used to be for clean water and clean beaches, but
Yeah.
we can't push that anymore.
Not since they
Now
raised the
it's getting harder
standards.
to attract people because they read the paper and they say, well, let's see, the water's not good. The power definitely isn't good. I mean, my power went off like 6 times this past weekend. And that's a killer on my equipment. So it's what they call dirty power when you get these fluxes when it doesn't even shut off and it's just dimming there and killing your electronics.
Yeah,
the
substations are supposed to pick that up when they have a bad transformer on the line. It's supposed to pick it up and drop the circuit so it can go back through and find the problem and then fix it. But they don't.
But I had no less than 6 power outages this weekend.
What area of the island are you talking about?
Where I live, where you need the passport, wherever you're in Dedido. So it's just frustrating, man, and I'm just here, just at my wit's end.
You're still smiling, Jack. There's one thing that's a constant with you, and that is that through it all, you're smiling.
Hey, my mother was a war survivor. My dad was a war survivor. So I got nothing to complain.
Well, I really appreciate your attitude.
Have a great weekend there.
Thank you very much, Jack. Call anytime. And that was our friend Jack with his perspectives on what's going on now. And yeah, we really have to watch what we're doing and the people who do things in our name. Let's take a break here and we'll come back to wrap up today's show.
Save big. Save really big when you bundle up your insurance policies with Nanbo Insurance. Insure your home, auto, motorcycle, or business with Nanbo and enjoy great savings, up to 50%. When it comes to insuring your property, no one knows better than the company with over 50 years of service to the community. Don't compromise the things that matter to you most. Call Nanbo today at 477-9754 or visit nanbo.com for more information. Nanbo Insurance, serving you since 1968.
Hulu is all your TV in one place, plus more. Watch thousands of hit shows, movies, and award-winning Hulu originals for only $5.99 per month. It's TV without the cable contract and the freedom of on-demand streaming. Get current network shows from ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, and binge-watch every season of your favorite cable shows. Premium Hulu viewing is brought to you by Proline Automotive and AB Sports, Guam's store for Nike. To advertise on Hulu, call Choice Digital at 989-0042.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
And welcome back to Tall Tales for Thursday afternoon. Jack's really got me going on some things that I was thinking about earlier, and I want to thank him again for calling in this afternoon. Elwin Champaco on Facebook Live is saying, the military is not only at fault, even our cultural leaders have made up most of the indigenous names of places around the island, including the villages and beaches. Just as they made up the idea that a net sinker should be hung around one's neck and called a sinahi. Much is faked and based on nonsense. I'm half of that is right, because the meaning of anything is what you attach to it. So if you think that the cultural dancers are reflecting the way that you feel about the culture, well, then it's authentic. And if you just moved back here after being, in the military for 20, 30 years, and you've been stationed in different places around the Pacific, and then you sit down and you look at the cultural dancers and you go, I saw that move about 3 months ago over in this club over there, the other place. Then you may think it's derivative of something else, So it's really a matter of perspective. And so, we expect people to be more educated but they're also, trying to push and make a living and appreciate the living that they're living. So it's half true. Ellen, but thank you for your comment. What Jack got me going on is this whole idea of complaining. I'm not complaining as I point this stuff out to you. We have these blinders on. So we know what standards we want to maintain, but then we don't realize that we're not maintaining those standards for ourselves. It's a double standard. We say, yeah, these people who want to protect their land, or they wanted to get their land, the original land back. And then they're using different arguments to advance the effort to get their land back. Not land to be held in common. It'll end up being land that is held by title. That's transferable to any Tom, Dick, and Harry who wants to buy it. And I'm not pointing my finger at anybody in particular, but we really need to refine what the arguments are. And we'll be much more effective at getting what we want if we don't blur the distinctions and we come down to real brass tacks. As Robert Underwood is really, he tries not to say it too often because he doesn't want to belabor that point. But you got to be clear about what you want. And part of being clear is to explain it to yourself. And be sure that you know what you're talking about before you open your mouth. And this has sort of been, I fault the media at this because they'll report anything and they won't challenge it. And that's why here on Tall Tales, Bob Klitzkie takes them, and I do it too, take the editorial writers to task because they've had a chance to sit down and take the story, and it's already cooked, it's already been considered, and you got the files, the dead files, which is the institutional knowledge of the stories, on various stories over the years here on the island. But by being superficial, or by failing to reference the backstory, it cultivates a very shallow understanding of these issues. And what we need is a deep understanding, so we know we have to know when we're chasing our tail, or when we've come this way before and it didn't work. Because we're really wasting time. We're wasting lifetimes. We're wasting heritage. We're wasting opportunity. And we need to get beyond this. We need to start solving problems and not complaining, but being effective in our strategy of where we want to go as a people, as individuals, as practitioners in an economy, as citizens of a nation. We need to be effective, not just play around at it until, time for a beer. So, and that's what we're trying to do here. I have a blast doing, sitting here with you for 2 hours on a weekday afternoon and examining some of these issues. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon, and I've got a stack of things. We haven't talked about the 2020 budget, or Senator James Moylan is suggesting that we vote on rolling back the taxes, or on any new taxes. And even an article I cut out back in August 9 by Michael Bivacqua about we need more power in the military buildup process. Being clear about what it is we want, and helping you to understand where you are, where we all are in our commons, as members of the public and the people who do things in our name with our tax money. And that'll do it for me. I'm Darryl Taggarty. I've been sitting here for Bob Klitzkie, who's off island. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon at 4. Ray Gibson will be here at this very chair and this very same microphone, this very same radio station tomorrow morning at 6. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a really good afternoon and evening, everyone.